Rian Johnson, welcome to the Katie McGrady Show.
Hey, Katie, thank you for having me.
I am thrilled. I was just telling you in the green room, my dad convinced me to watch Breaking Bad after watching an episode that you had directed. And so this is kind of a full circle moment. I guess I've earned street cred with my father once again, but I'm a big fan of yours for your whole body of work. But I have to tell you, in Catholic world, Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man, or Knives Out Mystery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That whole movie has kind of taken the Catholic world by storm. And so as a person in Catholic media, I just need to let you know, we are all talking about it. And I was thrilled when they offered a conversation with you. My first question right out the gate, a murder
Mhm.
mystery on Good Friday in a Catholic church. Most people would call you a heretic. We're all heralding you as a hero. Where did that idea originate from?
Well, it also very quick for all the Breaking Bad heads who are listening. The episode she's talking about that she told me was The Fly, which is amazing because it's such an outlier episode. It's like true Breaking Bad fan. Okay, so
My dad looks a
well,
little bit like Walter White. I think I should probably
that's
also
amazing.
clarify
That's
that
pretty
too.
good. Handsome man. Well, so for me, it started. I mean, I guess I should start with saying I did not grow up like I grew up very, very Christian, but I grew up evangelical
Mm.
Protestant. And but as a Protestant, it wasn't just that I was in a churchy family. I really, to use the language of kind of evangelical youth group, the youth group kid that I had a very deep personal walk with Christ. I had a relationship with Christ, and that's really how I framed the entire world around me. And I was very, yeah, I was very much that was very much my world up until my early 20s, and I'm not a believer anymore. So I grew up outside the Catholic Church. For me, that a lot of you know, I feel like just kind of backing up and zooming out, like part of why I was kind of very much drawn, especially with this third movie, to write it and make it kind of about faith and about Christianity very specifically. I mean, a lot of it was me just sort of feeling as someone who is no longer a believer and very much lives in the secular world, but has, I would say, sort of the bedrock that a lot of who I am is built on comes out of Christianity. Guess it was partially a hunger for, first of all, to kind of delve back in and parse some of my feelings about being in the church and about leaving the church, but also it was kind of a hunger for the things that I genuinely still to this day value about my time as a Christian, and feeling specifically with just the radical notion of loving your enemy, the notion of how I do so little of that today, just as a person in the secular world, and how I've, like everyone today, has been swept into kind of it's just so, the tribalism of just us versus them
Mm.
touches everything. And so I think there was a little bit like when you're sick and you crave pickles or something, there was a little bit of just like my wanting to reconnect with the very real kind of feelings of that very real kind of like bedrock. Anyway, and then the Catholicism element of it. I mean, there's a couple elements of why I chose to sit in a Catholic church as opposed to an evangelical church. I mean, just being incredibly honest, part of it was most of the churches I grew up going to, look like Pottery Barns for a movie so there's an element of aesthetics to it. You
Yeah.
you guys have everyone beat in terms of, but beyond that, also there's an element of, because the movie does also talk a lot about the notion of storytelling, and that's kind of the
Mhm.
common ground that it finds between a murder mystery movie and um and the church, is the notion of using stories, like Jesus used parables, using stories to get to truth, basically. And the reality is, part of that is the visual storytelling. And I think part of it also for me was growing up as a Protestant outside the Catholic Church. Be very honest, there was an element of exoticism to the Catholic Church. There's an
Mm.
element where being outside it, kind of like Sergio Leone looking at American Westerns and coming in and wanting to kind of delve into it. And also, I have an aunt and an uncle who are very, very deeply Catholic. Is like there was something that appealed to me about just the research element of learning more about it. And the last thing, I know I've been talking for a while. I'm
No,
sorry,
keep going,
but
please.
the very last thing was, because I wanted in the movie to speak. In my mind, the movie speaks very directly to my experience in the evangelical world, especially
Mhm.
coming out of the 80s. And there was part of me that felt like I could give myself permission to come even more straight at that if it had the slightly off-center thing of being set in the Catholic Church as opposed to exactly what I grew up in. So there's that
Mhm.
element of it too, I think. Anyway, that's been talking for 45 minutes. I apologize.
No, I love it. I mean, we are the most metal of the religions, I think, because of
You guys have it. Yeah.
I
So
mean,
cool.
from the visuals, even the
Yeah.
things our priests wear. I mean, my goodness, the whole world stops when we elect a new man who's going to wear white. Like we captivate the world. Yeah.
Can I say how sad I was that I wasn't able to work? It's the Tenebrae Mass, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That
That's
when
like a
I
deep cut, Ryan.
Well, no, I did. I went deep research-wise, and when I learned about that, I almost set the murder during a Tenebrae Mass because that would have you
Wow.
think about when the final thing is extinguished,
Mhm.
the lights, the terrifying it's so beautiful and evocative and
Mhm.
dramatic and such a yeah, anyway, sorry, go
Oh
yes.
man. Yeah, and that's so for folks who might not know, and I mean most of our listeners are Catholic, but that's like pre-Triduum. And you really do set the film at kind of the most dramatic part of a Catholic's year with
Mhm.
Holy Thursday and Good Friday and then getting into Easter Sunday. I have to tell you, I had flashbacks to COVID when we didn't get to have Easter Sunday Mass. I was like, this is like their COVID
Mm.
year at this little tiny parish, which, is set in upstate New York, was filmed overseas. We actually did interview your priest consultor, Father Scott. I hunted him
Oh,
down and I
Father
was like,
Scott, he's the best.
yes. And I got some of the behind the scenes of like, well, these are some of the questions he asked. And this is the
Mm,
conversation I got to have with Josh O'Connor about the actual hymn that gets sung. So you really did
mhm.
do your deep cut research. And I have to say we Catholics appreciated it because it's not always, that's not always the case.
I'm sure there's still things we fudged, I'm sure, and I
Well,
apologize for that.
no, but even if they're I think what she captured best though, beyond the Catholic visuals, was this idea. There was a line in the movie, my husband and I paused it and turned to each other and said, "Well, that right there nailed America right now." And it's
Mm,
this moment between the young father who is excited to try to evangelize and the failed politician who's turned into
mm,
this grifter right-wing content creator, and he was like, "Oh, so
mm,
convince people that the thing they love is going to be taken away by the people they hate."
mhm,
And I feel like that is kind of this underlining lining theme of the film. Can you talk to me a little bit
mm,
about how you were trying to weave together this greater conversation? Because if we're being honest, and I can go full nerd, Knives Out have a lesson to them, whether it's
mm.
about greed or narcissism or the elite. My goodness, we watched the second one in Paris right after we saw the Mona Lisa with our own two eyes. It was kind of a
Wow.
perfect little kismet moment. So like your movies, they have this deeper lesson, but you also want people to have fun in them. But talk to me about that underlining we other each other. And
Yeah,
this is a film trying to show us how to rise above that in some ways.
yeah. Well, and I mean, a little bit that gets back to the thing I said before about the initial thing that drew me because, the thing that he lists because in that scene, in some ways, it's the most partisan of all the scenes in the movie because he lists off all these kind of, social, kind of social wars or
Mm-hmm.
talking points thing. In some ways, though, it's very universal. I could easily apply it to any number of the sides because quote unquote sides because really when he lists off all of sort of the talking point triggers of really for me that was much more about just the fact that we're all in this state where there are all these kind of trigger points that different people, whether they're social media companies putting it into our feed or politicians who have learned that they can say it in a fundraising text that have been kind of cynically just turned into these little beep beep beep. They know they can like hit our little button and get us angry at each other. And it's so exhausting. And because there are things that we actually should be getting angry about, and there are things that are, really important. And it feels like there's just an endless barrage of, of these little things that they've learned can kind of get us angry at each other. But then the line that you're talking about of, I mean, that again, as much as that applies to that character as sort of like a right wing influencer, it also it applies to me. It also applies to when I'm sitting there scrolling my social media feed. That is what that same feeling of kind of these mother effers are gonna doing this, So in a way, just kind of like encapsulating that as okay, this concept of doing this is the actual enemy, not even that guy specifically, but that was something that was yeah, that felt really important to me. And the bigger thing you're talking about of kind of entertainment versus, sort of it being about faith. I think rereading, because I did this before I read before I wrote the script, rereading all of Chesterton's Father Brown mysteries was a big thing for me in terms of seeing that, okay, it's not like, man, how do I get these themes into an entertaining story? Okay, I mean, granted, Chesterton is, a genius, so I'm not like, oh, I can just do that. But it was like, okay, it is possible for these two things to be peanut butter and chocolate, and for kind of a view of faith in the moral world, they actually can fit and play really well with an entertaining murder mystery.
I love that you referenced Father Brown because it did feel very Father Brown. And there were definitely moments too that it felt very British in some of its humor, which I was a
Yeah.
huge fan of. The moment when Benoit Blanc slams on the organ and and makes his dramatic, which I want to
Yeah.
talk about. I want to talk about him for a second, and not just the
Mm.
hilarious moments where there's that necessary levity or the lengthening of his hair over the past 3
Mhm.
movies. Somebody did want me to ask, where in Louisiana is the man actually from as a Louisianian? But you don't have to tell me, it's okay.
You'd have to ask him.
Well, we can kind of guess if we look at
Yeah,
I-10 where that drawl particularly comes from. He
probably.
sounds like an old cousin of mine, but I will say the outsider element, and in this
Mm,
movie, maybe more than the other two, it seems like Benoit Blanc he's searching for something. He's looking
mm,
for something, and he doesn't
mm,
convert at the end. He's not walking out of there saying, I'm going to go get confirmed. I'll be back for Mass next Sunday. He actually kind of like laughs at it and walks on out,
mm,
but he is a changed man. Now, I'm not saying
mm.
you're a comp for Benoit Blanc, but I am going to ask Ryan, as you made this movie, looking at all these Catholic visuals, looking at a lot of these faith themes, what maybe surprised you most about that journey for yourself? I'm not saying, are you coming back?
Mhm,
Can we get you to Mass
mhm.
this Easter? I'm more just, this is a journey of filmmaking. I don't know, of making a Star Wars movie made you more or less of a Star Wars fan? Did making a movie with Catholic
More.
themes make you more or less of a person kind of investigating your faith?
I think the answer to both of them is more, and I think it would be in some ways, I mean, we won't get into the parallels between 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 true believers in religion and true Star Wars believers with those, but, but I know it and in some way look, I also will say that, because that first scene with Judd and Blanc, where they kind of go head to head in the church, it's I will absolutely say, though, that it's not like my perspective is Blanc's, and in fact, when I started writing the script, I feel like I was writing much more with my internal perspective being that of an outsider, and it didn't work. Like, I found really quickly that Judd was feeling just kind of like a version of he wasn't feeling honest, and so part of the process with this was me having to very much like a method actor almost like or it was like therapy. I had to really put myself back into the place I was when I was in my early 20s and a teenager and was a Christian, and I had to genuinely find points of reference of things that I connected with and inhabit that belief in order to write the character of Judd honestly. And in that place, that scene is almost like I have both of those people inside me. And that scene was
Mm.
kind of letting them talk. But I mean, there are a couple levels of it. The Catholicism specifically, I think for me, researching and writing and making this movie was because I had described growing up. I mean, as a Protestant who's outside of Catholicism, Catholicism was a little scary and was a little, you know. And so for me, was the intent going into it. I feel like it really happened both through forming a deeper connection with my aunt and uncle through the course of making it, and also getting to know Father Scott and getting to beyond just talking with him. I don't know if he told you, we did a really beautiful thing where I went out to Denver and sat down at my uncle's house with him and like 5 other local Denver priests. And we had a long dinner and had some wine. And we just had a great kind of like, and we didn't talk about theology and we talked about faith, but mostly what we talked about were their lives as modern young men who are American priests today. And throughout all of that, and also through just having to kind of sincerely, for myself, get myself back to a lot of being a believer in a way in order to write Judd, and doing that in the context of a Catholic world and the Catholic service. It did. I mean, again, I am like Blanc. I'm not. This doesn't end with a conversion, but for me, it was incredibly therapeutic, both in terms and it's an ongoing, as anyone who has had faith in their life, or it's a road, it's an ongoing
Mhm.
thing. So it would be, yeah, I think there's no way to kind of make this movie sincerely and not come out the other end farther on down the road.
Yeah. It's definitely a movie for the seeker and the person whose butt is in the pew every Sunday. Like, I mean, people from all spectrums have said they've enjoyed it. A good friend
Mhm.
of mine, he said it's the best Catholic movie he's ever seen. And I said, I don't know, the Mission might want to have a word with you, but I don't. Jeremy Irons might be the
Mission's
most
very great.
consummate priest on television, but Father
Well,
Judd comes close.
man, well, that's amazing to hear. You know what's shocked me in with those young priests? I asked them, "What is the best depiction of a priest you've ever seen on film?" And almost to a man, you know what they answered is, there's a Brendan Gleeson movie called Calvary. That
Mm-hmm.
have you seen this film?
I have, yeah, yeah.
It's hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like because it's very much it's an Irish film. It's very much about, this the scandal, the abuse scandal, and just very much takes that on with no but it's an incredible portrait of a character. And I think what they responded to was that this didn't feel like a cardboard cutout one way or the other of a priest. This felt like a fully developed character who was wrestling with the most difficult thing you can possibly wrestle with. But that didn't have kid gloves on. That really stuck with me. Yeah.
Oh, I
But the
love that.
mission, I mean, the mission, come on.
Every Catholic school kid's been forced to watch that on a rainy day, so I feel like we all have those scenes burned into our brain of what
Yes.
it really means. Knives Out, we can add Knives Out into that, I think. I mean, I definitely,
So,
especially I have to thank you personally. The closing scene, we won't spoil it for folks who haven't gone to
mm,
see it, but you should go watch it. There's many moments of confession that are throughout the movie, and in a kind of a jarring way. In fact, the
mm.
first confession scene. In fact, I had one woman send me a not very nice email saying, "How dare you recommend this movie?" I said, "Just keep watching, please. Just keep watching. I
It,
promise you, I'll give you a warning next time." Well,
we
we
were
don't.
very conscious of that.
Oh yes,
As
oh
long as
yes,
they get past this scene,
yeah.
I
Just
promise we land the ending. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Anyway, sorry,
But
good.
there's this moment where we don't hear the absolution prayer until the
Hmm.
end. In the moment where
Yeah.
absolution needs to be given. And you got it right. Those are the
Mm,
words that we hear when we I went to confession last week, and those are the words I
mm,
heard. And it probably wasn't as dramatic a confession, but was still just as powerful. So I love
mm.
the way that mercy and healing is at the heart of this film, and you do such a great job. I just want to thank you. You did it
Thank
well,
you.
and we Catholics we're proud of you, and we're proud of it, and we're telling
That means so
everybody about
much.
it. Um,
Oh man, that means so much to me.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to put my journalist hat on for a second. We're going to get more of these, right? I mean, not necessarily in this place, but Knives Out is coming back. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
If I can come back, I mean, I've done 3 in a row, so I'm writing something totally different to do
Oh,
next.
cool.
But like, if I can keep making these on for the rest of my life, I would be a happy man. I also feel like the genre itself, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it can be a big, crazy vacation comedy like Glass Onion, and then it can
Yeah,
delve into some of the most deepest personal things for me in the world, and do that with a serious but still be that for me, it's like, okay, what else can we do with it? So
I
we'll
love
see.
it. Well, we'll be watching. Rian Johnson, I am so grateful. Thanks for taking the time.
Katie, thanks so much. Yeah.